NewsTalk 1010.
So there's this case out in Britain where this guy, he's 31 years old, Andy Thompson, and he has filed for renewed access in court after seeing his daughter Layla appear on a television morning show with her mother. And this kid has been turned into like a pageant princess. And the mom is trying to get her to become like a reality TV star, and she spent a ton of money in trying to make that happen. Hundreds of pounds a month from her benefits on cosmetics for her daughter. Well, this guy Andy Thompson this man. He saw his daughter on television and said, "Okay, enough's enough. Like, forget it. Like, I need to have custody of my daughter here." And this is after he had, because when the couple had split, when their daughter Layla was a baby, it contested access hearings initially, but Mr. Thompson then felt that it was in Layla's best interest that her mother was allowed to be the sole caregiver. Of course, now he regrets that decision. I want to talk about that with Laura Paris, associate at Shulman Law Firm, joining us on the night side on In-Depth Radio, News Talk 1010. Laura, appreciate it. So, that's the case so far in a nutshell. There's some of the details that we can talk about here, but, on the outset, does this father have a case?
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's hard to say. When you're dealing with any issues of custody and access, typically what the court considers is what is in the best interest of the child. Not typically, that's what they consider.
Yeah.
So what needs to be ascertained in this circumstance is there something that the mother is doing that is, in fact, to the detriment of the child? So I do understand, in this circumstance that the mother was getting a lot of public backlash, and I think that to a certain extent probably fueled the father's campaign to, seek a variation of the current access and custody orders. But really, ultimately, what it comes down to is not necessarily public opinion or even necessarily what the father thinks is best, but what is best for the child. That said, at Shulman Law, when we're dealing with our clients and there's issues to this sort of extent where, the child may be involved in an activity and a parent has a certain opinion that it's not necessary that the child be involved or there's some sort of issue with that, what we do tell our clients to do is kind of step back from their personal opinions and look at, what does my child want? And if ultimately you determine that, I know in this article it mentioned something about the child loving makeup and being, very interested in that over toys and et cetera. So it's a matter of really figuring out what makes my child happy. And once you determine that, then you can start to think about, steps to take to try to make both parents happy. So, for example, educating the child about how, looks aren't everything, consider an education or, something along those lines, for example.
Well, we know that Layla, the little girl here, is a regular at dance contests and beauty pageants, has her own Instagram, Twitter, and maybe that was put up by the mom. Maybe the mom wanted to do that. I don't know. But it seems like this is a kid that wants to have the spotlight. But I guess a question that could be asked here is, a 7-year-old. Does a 7-year-old know what she's getting into with being on television and being a star? And maybe obviously in this case there's one parent that feels that it would be great, and there's another parent that feels like she should be protected.
Right. So I think in these circumstances, what's important is to actually realize that it may fall outside of the scope of someone in my position, like a lawyer, and also outside of the scope of a parent. And you have to look to professional guidance on it in actually ascertaining what is best for the child and what the child wants. So like you said, these things like social media and whatnot, they may not have been initiated by the child. But really, in order to get to the bottom of it, it's usually necessary to get a professional involved to actually sit there and meet with the child and figure out, is this what you want? One, and two, what kind of effect is it having on you? And is it ultimately in your best interest? Because a child's opinion may not, especially at the age of 7, what they may be sitting there and saying that they love may not actually be what is best for them. So it's at that point that getting a professional opinion in there who's comfortable with dealing with these issues to kind of tell you, is this good, and is a child happy with this, and is it best for them?
Yeah, and like a lot of people, and we're going to be taking calls on this, and a lot of people would say, hey, you know what? When this kid was a baby, the father said, hey, the kid's yours, basically in court. I mean, because of that. Would one basically look at this and say, hey, he washed his hands of raising this kid a long time ago, so he should not have any say? Well, what do you say to people that would believe that?
No, I don't believe that's necessarily the case. I mean, circumstances change. Dad may have been in a certain, life position at the time that the access order was made, where he didn't feel that he was capable of being the best father he could be, and he thought that mom would be in a better position to do that. Years down the line, maybe Dad has gotten his life together. Maybe he's in a lot better of a position to be that sort of role model for mom and, for the child. And at that point, in Canada, at least, we consider that, or it could be considered a material change in circumstances, which basically would justify the variation of an order if it's found to be in the child's best interest.
Laura Paris, associate at Shulman Law Firm. Really appreciate your expertise, Laura. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Well, it's I'm glad we had Laura on to get her opinion on this. What do you think? Who's in the right? Who's in the wrong here? If you're playing the judge, what's your verdict? 416-872-1010. You can text us 71010 at Jeff Samet on Twitter. And I agree with Laura. I would want to know a little bit more about what the kid wants. I know, she's only 7, but I would want to know what her interests are. Personally speaking, as a parent, without passing judgment on this mom, it's not something I would want to put my kid through. But that's how I would elect to parent my kid. I'm not telling her how to parent hers. 416-872-1010. You can text us 71010 at Jeff Samet on Twitter. In for Barb DiGiulio, it's the night side for